Hey guys, Danimal here. This is part 2 in my returning to World of Warcraft / New Players World of Warcraft 2020 guide. So, I realised that before I kind of said to you guys I would do the second part as keybinds and like movement and stuff, but I realised we kind of needed to go over the classes first, right? And you know, you might want to decide what character to pick before that. So that's what I'm going to do. So, I'm recording in a bit of a different format this time. I'm kind of doing it live instead of doing commentary over, because I thought it's just a little bit easier if I put it into kind of my natural setting. I'm a streamer, so this is what I do. So, here we go. 2 factions. Alliance, Horde. They have all the stock kind of races, and then unlockable character races here called allied races. The Alliance get humans, dwarves, night elves, gnomes, Draenei, Worgen, and Pandaren. Pandaren are also on the Horde side because they can choose whatever faction they wanted to join. You have the Orc Boys, you've got the Undead, or Forsaken as they're sometimes called, the Tauren, Trolls, Blood Elves, and Goblins. Then the allied races for Alliance are Void Elves, Lightforged Draenei, which are kind of cool, Dark Iron Dwarfs, which they look sick, they're cool beards. They're called Tyrann, which is kind of like chunkier humans, chunky humans. And then Mecha Gnomes, which are kind of like cyborg gnomes, which I believe if you had the choice between this little guy and this little guy, you're going to want to choose this one. And then you've got the Nightborn, you've got the High Mountain Tauren, the Magheart OG Magheart Orcs, which are kind of like Savage Orcs, which are pretty sick. The big badass Zandalari Trolls, and then the Furry Boys, the Volpira. So let's pick. I'm going to pick up this human guy quick because he's got most of the classes here, so we can explain that. So you can be male and female, obviously. Have all of the races. So I'll just demonstrate here as well. So you might be thinking, but Dan, I've just loaded up Battle for Azeroth because I've bought it because the last one you sold WoW to me so well. Why does that look so damn different? This is the public test run again. So this is the, as mentioned in my last video, the new patch for Shadowlands, the pre-patch for Shadowlands, should I say, is coming out in a couple of weeks. It's currently the 2nd of September. So if it has been updated, then this section is probably completely irrelevant to you, right? This will be the new character select screen. Now, I did debate whether using the old one, but then I thought if this was a new player in a couple of weeks' time, as opposed to this is what it's going to look like forever, and how well this explains the classes and stuff and how nice it looks, it was just easier to do this, right? So just bear with me. It will look like this in a couple of weeks' time. And it also gives you a little experience of what it's going to look through and look like. That being said, let's move on to the classes. So there are 3 main roles in the Holy Trinity system which WoW uses, and I explained this last time: tanking, healing, DPS, or damage dealing, but DPS standing for damage per second. People will say DPS a lot. That's kind of like an ingrained WoW thing. Now, because we like to learn terminology, right? And I'm trying to keep it as like, I don't know what's the best word? Terminology, explanation-y, coining it. Anyway, you got your tanks, which are the ones which protect the group. They hold all of the mobs' attention, which is called aggro, onto them, and they lead the group through the dungeons. And they have a lot of utility to like stop themselves from being hurt so much. You've got what's called defensive cooldowns to boost your defensive ability and keep everything on you and stay in there nice and strong. So I guess the first thing you need to discover at the moment is what sort of role you want to play. So if you want to play the kind of leader beast role, to be the one who leads through and you're confident, and you want to be this big boy confident tank, then go for tanking. Healers are the ones which like healing in any other game. You keep your friends alive and yourself alive by using magic and spells to heal yourself. And WoW's kind of got healing down to like a really kind of cool skill. I don't really feel like there is many other games that I've experienced where the healing's similar to WoW, but it feels very engaging healing in this game. So You've got your healers, which keep your party alive, and you know they can do some damage as well. I mean, they've been encouraged to do damage nowadays in dungeons, but obviously the primary focus is the healing the group. And then you've got your damage dealers, your melee damage dealers, and your range damage dealers. They're split into kind of 2 categories. So depending on what you prefer to be pokey from range, or stabby from, or smacky swingy, or I don't know, spell castery from range. You can be swingy from up close in the melee. You've got those to discuss what you want in your head as well. So it depends what you want to do. Do you want a pokey damage from range, stabby from up close, healy keep everyone alive, or get in their face and tunky? That's how we're explaining it, and we're rolling with that. Anyway, right, so without further ado, these are the classes in World of Warcraft. We have Warrior, we have Hunter. I'm going to let the little animations play out while we do it. We'll go back to Warrior as well, just so we can see him spin around and swing his axe and maybe do a little roar. No. Mage. A little ice bolt, a little bit of fire. Rogue. Darting in from the shadows and spinning his knives. The Priest. Doing his floaty healy. That actually looks pretty sick. We've got the Warlock. Summoning its demons. There we go. Paladin. Defender of the righteous. Monk, I'll show you with this one quickly. Punch, kick, here, Jackie Chan style. We have the Death Knight, and summon his little ghoul, zombie boy. We then have, right, switch over. Actually, we'll switch. Let's go trolls, because they have druids. Druid, nature boys. Ooh, he can turn into a cat. Ooh, shapeshifters, and the shamans. You see these little totems here, and the lightning and the fire, and then finally. Actually, we'll go to night elves for this guy, because night elves are cool. Oh, look at that. I know what you're thinking. That looked sick. Let's get around to that in a second. So, let's pull back. That's all the classes that we have available to us. Each one of those classes, except for Druid, has 3 specializations. Druid has 4. The Warrior, and if you notice here on the tooltips, it says tank or melee damage. That kind of now has this is what I was saying, that this new pre-patch is actually a much more new player friendly environment, and it's giving you kind of like the idea. So I mean, what I'll do the explanations that are here. So it says warriors are plate wearing fighters who strive for protection in armed combat. As warriors fight, they generate rage, which is used as their power source for special attacks. I kind of ad-libbed that a little bit. So warriors are pretty much get your 2-handed sword or axe or mace or whatever, get into the combat, build up this rage and smack it out on other people. They have 2 melee specs, 2 melee DPS specs, and 1 melee tank spec. There is no melee, there's no range tank spec. So ignore that comment. 1 tank spec, 2 melee DPS specs. So warriors are pretty much like, you know, your bog standard like barbarian, well, warrior in most games as well. You get in there, swingy, smacky, smack first, questions later kind of character, right? Hunter. Hunters are at home in the wilderness and have a special affinity with beasts. They're not the dodgy kind, guys. They rely on their weaponry and their pet to deal damage. So this would have been a bit different. They probably would have said ranged weaponry if they hadn't changed hunters in recent years. Now, hunters used to have 3 ranged DPS specs, but they do not have that anymore. They have access to 1 melee spec, which does have a lot of ranged attacks. It's very technical and very interesting, but at heart it is a melee DPS spec. That's survival. That's what that spec's called. The other 2, Beast Mastery and Marksman, use ranged weapons like guns and bows and crossbows to deal range damage. One of the builds is very, very pet focused, so you do a lot of damage orientated around your pet. The other doesn't have a pet at all. Well, it does more damage without the pet, and it's used more focused on the kind of archery ranger kind of feel. Okay, so Hunter has a lot of utility to do with its pet as well, and it's kind of like a very, very kind of you control the both of you really. So if that's kind of like it's your standard kind of bow class, but if that's something that you're interested in, that's what I mean. If you have any questions about that, well, obviously stop by my stream. You can come ask me any questions on Hunter, because I've played Hunter for a very, very long time now. I've played a lot of the classes, but Hunter is the one that I've mained for probably the longest, as well as Mage. Now, Mage is your typical caster, your typical sorcerer, your typical wizard. They have a fire spec, an arcane spec, a frost spec, and as you can imagine, they all have their kind of like different niches between those, like controlling with the frost, or you've got the explosive power of fire, or the really refined kind of focused damage of arcane. But if you like your standard mages, you know, it's kind of an iconic thing. You know, as it says on the tooltip here, mages are the iconic magic users of Azeroth who learn their craft through intense research and study. You don't really research and study a lot, I'm not going to lie. They make up for their light armor with a powerful array of offensive and defensive abilities. So that goes to tell you that you're quite squishy. There's a term used in WoW, squishy, when you're not. You need to protect yourself with your magic, otherwise you're just gonna go. I'm glad I got that. So yeah, and they're all ranged. They're 3 ranged DPS specs. So pretty standard. If you want to be a standard wizard kind of sorceress type, Mage is your thing. Rogue. If you're into the whole sneaky fantasy, the whole thief kind of fantasy, Rogue is absolutely perfect for you. They're also kind of like what swashbuckling style spec, and then the other 2 are very refined, like around what's called stealth. Now, stealth in World of Warcraft makes you invisible to other players and to the mobs around the world, the monsters. So you can do proper sneaky, and stealth is a kind of a really big thing in WoW. It's an interesting thing. You kind of have to be careful when you're up close, but for the most time you can pop around in stealth, and like if that's your kind of thing, you want to be sneaky, then that's it. Obviously you're not as armored and dangerous as a warrior, for example. You can't get in someone's face toe to toe for as long as a warrior could, for example. But if you want to be, you know, get in behind, and there's a lot of dodgy things I say about this. Get in behind and stabby. Rogue's your guy. So rogues often serve as assassins or scouts, though many are lone wolves as well. Rogues can often sneak around enemies or attack an opponent from behind and try and finish them off quickly. There we go. So you kind of disperse your sneaky, like I said. Priest. I'm going to try and read the tooltips first this time. Priests are well-rounded healers with a variety of tools. However, they can also sacrifice their healing to deal damage with shadow magic. So, Priest is the only class in the game which has access to 2 healing specs, and it has 1 range damage spec. So, as I don't know if I mentioned, Rogue was all melee damage. You probably could have gathered Rogue is all melee damage spec. But Priest has 2 healing specs and 1 ranged damage spec, which is called Shadow, which is basically they use light to heal, they use Shadow to deal damage. Now, Shadow Priest is what's called a dot class, means they do damage over time. That's what dot stands for. And Shadow is quite a cool spec. It's kind of like the dark side of the Force, if that makes sense, like your Sith spec. You've got your Jedi and your Sith, yeah? It puts a lot of nasty, horrible shadow kind of curses on people, and then you basically turn into like a big shadowy void and start blasting the living hell out of them. As for the 2 healing specs, they do vary. They're both very different from each other. One of them, called Holy, is very raw healing, so it's very much just like whack-a-mole health bars, as like most of the healing specs are. Something goes down, you can heal it back up. I think they also have what's called HOTS, which is heal over times. I think they've got a good mix of like heal over times and raw kind of just block damage healing. The other spec, on the other hand, Discipline, it's more focused around being a bit more offensive by dealing damage, healing by dealing damage, and using shields to preempt, like holy shields to preemptively nullify damage. And they're quite unique in this retrospect. There's none of the other healing specs do this. It's kind of like damage dampening spec, which is really cool. It's like a cool niche kind of style. I believe in Shadowlands it's becoming a bit more shieldy like that. It has veered away a little bit in recent years, but Now it's going to be very much similar to that kind of shield. There's big damage incoming, quick, I've got to protect everyone, and then bang, it comes, and it's all good. Everyone's like sustained a lot less, your healing is very high. And you protect the group by doing that, and then in your off time you can just start building up some damage and healing people, topping them up like that. So Priest is kind of very unique. If you're really interested in healing, Priest is a very good one. You've got 2 different specs to play with there. If you want to learn the 2 different styles, then it's very interesting. And Shadow is not half bad to play either. It's actually very fun. You probably catch me on my stream at the moment playing quite a bit of my Shadow Priest that I'm leveling. I'm leveling all classes at the moment, just to kind of give a disclaimer. So if you are new and you're looking to like build up some more tips and stuff, or you're an old player returning and you might be playing your class, I am leveling them all to 120 at the moment in BFA, but when it comes back up I'll be leveling them all to level 50. So yeah, we'll look out for that, and if you want to come join my stream, the link will be in below. And yeah, I'm really looking to build up a nice cool WoW community with you guys, so I'd love to see you pop along, and it would mean the world to me. It's to anyone stopping by, I don't care. Even if you don't follow me, stopping by and saying hello would be good for me anyway. It would make me feel happy. Right, moving on. So talking about damage over times, I'm going to go for the undead for this. Let's switch to female now, because we're like almost halfway through. We'll switch to the undead for this. Speaking of damage over time, warlocks are like the OG damage over time class, right? So these warlocks are the ones which use their shadowy magic and like fire magic and curses, and they throw loads and loads of dots onto the target, and just watch everything drain away. Now, these guys are like demonic ritualists, yeah? So if you're into the kind of demon-y kind of stuff, as you can see on the screen right now, they're summoning their little demons. This guy's really for you. Now, warlocks are my least played class, and I don't know, I feel like I should have always played one because they're pretty damn sick. And I'm tempted to even like actually play one in Shadowlands at the moment because they're looking really good. They kind of changed their specs over the times. So like I said, they deal shadowy damage and fiery damage at the same time. One spec is very much throw the damage over time spells onto your target and then just watch everything drain and die in front of you in some kind of very sadistic manner. I mean, I feel like actually warlocks are probably for the sadists. One spec is very much build up some power and then blow shit up with your big ass chaos spells. Bit like a mage though, they're kind of similar to that. They have like the kind of like raw, just bang 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 in a throw, bang bang. Don't bother too much with the dots, they're more about the whole raw power and a bit more control. And then the third spec's a little bit more like the hunter with the pets. You have loads and loads of demons and you just keep summoning demons into the battle and just watching your pets absolutely rake everything up for you. So, which is kind of cool. So if you're into the kind of demon fantasy, you've got a lot to play with this class. I don't know how complex they are. I mean, you do get good tutorials for all of these characters anyway, so I wouldn't worry about difficulty for any of them, to be honest, anyway. Let's move on to the next one. Let's pick the Blood Elf up so we can go to the Paladins. So, Paladins. Excuse me. So, Paladins are your typical Crusaders, right? They use light to defend, they use light to heal, they use light to do the damage. They are the Crusaders of light. I realised I didn't read the Warlocks thing, actually, so as I pretty much actually said that, didn't I? Warlocks cast fire and shadow magic to damage, drain, or curse their enemies, and they summon demons as servants. I pretty much explained that. That's just like an ad-libbed version, right? Apologies. I'm still very new to doing this kind of thing, but very much like me, very raw, and I'm going to keep it that way because I'm a human like you guys. I'm not a robot. So, Paladins are heavy armored fighters and defenders who use holy magic to heal wounds and combat evil. They can focus on two-handed weapons, shields, or healing. So, to give an example, Warlocks also have 3 ranged DPS specs. I got really bad at that. I kind of got lost in the explanation there, didn't I? As opposed to, say, Warlock, Rogue, Mage, and Hunter, who have DPS specs, and these guys all have all melee specs, all range specs. Paladins, I think are the first class here, actually. They're the first class along the line here, which have all 3 of the Holy Trinity that... we have in the game. So, they can tank, they can heal, or they can melee DPS, let's just say that. They're kind of similar for all the specs. They do big beastie healing, so big block healing. They use their holy magic to just chunk your health back up, and they have lots of blessings and buffs that they buff you with so that they can protect you and stuff. So it's nice. It's a good healing spec. They also do similar thing. You're a bit like Captain America actually with protection, because you use your Holy Avenger shield and you're leader of the group. So if you kind of like Captain America, you're going to get on with a protection paladin. And then the Retribution Paladin wields a big two-handed weapon and basically gets in there using his holy defending might to blow people up. And I think Paladin's one of those characters which have got good class fantasy. And if you're into the kind of Holy Crusader and you want to be the goodie, they're definitely a great class for you to pick. Right, I'm going to move on to Druid next. So, Druid, so I said this before, I made this kind of disclaimer with Druid, right? Druid has 4 specs. They have a melee DPS spec, a range DPS spec, a tank spec, and a healing spec. So they do every single role in the game. Like even with the combined DPS role, I was like doing West Side then West Side. As you can see on the tooltip, tank, healer, ranged, or melee damaged. Druids are shapeshifters with an affinity for the plant. That actually says that. With an affinity for the plant and animal kingdoms. Affinity for the plant, that actually made me laugh. Druids can specialize in healing, casting spells at range, taking on the form of a cat or a bear to fight in melee. So, as it says, Druids are shapeshifters and they're lovers of plants. They're the hippies of WoW. They use nature damage and healing and astral damage, like to do their magical side, and then to do the kind of like other stuff they can turn into animals. So you have an aquatic form, so it makes you swim faster. You have a flight form, which means you can fly. You have a travel form, which means you can run fast as a deer. But then they're kind of like the off forms. And then you've got the cat form, which has just popped up nicely, and a bear form. Cat form is there to be like a rogue. You can go stealth, you can do sneaky, you can bite things and you can rip them and make them bleed, and it's very much like you have turned into a big cat and you're ripping people to shreds. Bear tanking is pretty much the same thing, getting involved in the middle of the same thing as like warriors and stuff, where you can get in, you're a big bear, so you take loads of damage, you swipe the enemies to keep them on you, and you're just, you're tough, you're a big tough bear. Healing, they use lots of hots, as I've mentioned before, that heal over time, so they use a lot of those, and it uses nature to heal. It's got a lot of utility and a lot of movement, so like druids are very much a jack of all trades, right? They do a lot of everything, and I believe then balance, which is the range DPS spec, uses nature damage, and like it has this kind of mechanic where it has like sun and moon, and you do damage based on those two different things. So you can do like lunar eclipse damage and then suddenly sun fire damage, and it's all very like it's all very nature based, and it's quite cool. So if you want to learn like everything and you want to be a jack of all trades, Druid could be very appealing to you. Let's move on. Let's move back to the males again. Dark Iron Dwarfs? Yeah, cool. Let's do this. Shaman. Actually, I feel like I should be Orc Shaman, right? Because the OG Shaman is Thrall and he is the Orc. So these little things here are called totems. Totems are like the Shaman's kind of bread and butter. They deal the damage, yeah? Not the damage, they do all the utility. Some of them have like some cool effects and stuff where they do help deal damage, like some like healing totems. So they have, Shamans have a healing spec and 2 damage specs, 1 melee, 1 range spec. They use nature spells to attack from range, and then they use like loads of like storm beating, lightning striking axes and stuff to deal damage when they're up close. So that's enhancement and elemental sort of specs. And then you've got a healing spec as well called restoration, which they use nature to heal your allies. So Shamans are pretty cool. The totems are like their big focus, so you like a lot of your play focuses on dropping totems in certain places to buff people and yeah, basically deal damage and slow enemies and stuff. So I think that if you want to try out everything but tanking, Shaman would be kind of a good option to take up as well. Like I said, I will be doing footage of these throughout the next month or two on my stream, so if you really can't decide between these characters what you want to play, you can always jump into my stream and ask me, Dan, do a dungeon on Shaman because I want to see it, and we'll cycle through. I like to cycle through leveling all of them at the moment one by one. So once I've done a few levels on one, I switch over. So if you want to do that, head on over to my Twitch. Like I said, Monk. Now Monk has got, it's like one of these fancy classes, a bit like Paladin, like I said, Warlock, Rogue. Has the kind of kung fu fantasy, so like the old Chinese, the old Chinese dubbed films, the kung fu films. They have a melee DPS spec, they have a healing spec, and they have a tank spec. The melee DPS spec is focused all around on comboing your attacks: punch, kick, somersault, elbow drop. There's not really skills like that. They do have other names. It's a lot of punching and kicking, but you do more damage the more you combo, and it just has that kind of kung fu fantasy, right? Like the way of Bruce Lee, get in there and do some beatings. So if you kind of want that fantasy of being like this ninja kind of fighter, Street Fighter, then Monk might interest you. The healing spec is much to do with like you do a lot of channeled and dot healing, and it's all about building up your like chi energy and then bursting it out and cleansing, like with Yulong the dragon, which is like the kind of the animal they worship is Yulong the dragon, and it helps aid you with your mists of healing. It's a very interesting healing spec. It's a bit different to the other ones. It's a different sort of playstyle. You do have kind of like what's called Way of the Crane, where you can punch and kick the enemies. Oh, we're disconnected from the server. What's going on? Punch and kick the enemies basically, and it will heal you and heal the party, and you can kind of get involved in the action as well as healing, a bit like I said with the priest and that. Right, so just letting this log back in. Let's create a new character. Where were we? We were on. I'm just going to pick that Blood Elf one up again because they can be the last two anyway. So yeah, monks have got that, and then finally they've got their tank spec, which is called Brewmaster. So I don't know if you know the ancient fighting kung fu style called the Drunken Monkey. The Drunken Monkey revolves around like being a bit like staggery and like. Whew. And then when someone attacks, you kind of use your lightning reflexes and you take them out, and it's kind of like pretending to be. I don't really know how I'm trying to explain it with this, but basically you use teas and spirits and beers and stuff to fight. I'll sum it up in a nutshell. It's called Brewmaster. Basically, you just chug beer and take less damage as you go along because you're getting drunker and drunker and drunker. And if you're taking a bit of pain, you swig some more vodka and you keep on rolling. It also does involve throwing like kegs of beer and kegs of spirits even at the enemies, and then setting them on fire by breathing on them with flames. So if you like the fantasy of being a drunken bugger and getting in there and starting some fights, then Brewmaster might be interesting too, right? And now finally to the last two classes, which are kind of like the fantasy hero classes that they've added over the years, in honor of Illidan the Demon Hunter and Arthas the Lich King, Death Knight. So I checked, and you might have saw when I logged back in, I checked these guys. Usually Demon Hunters level in at level 98 to begin with, and you might not be able to unlock them at the beginning of the game, usually, until you've reached that level. They usually start at 98, and Death Knights usually start at 55, or if you're using an allied race, they start at 58. And then they both have their own sort of like intro starting zones to kind of like introduce the class. The monks kind of like skipped over this a little bit. It was a bit weird with monks. They did something a bit different. They added an experience buff, but you still started from level 1. These guys don't start from level 1, and now on PTR they start from level 8, so I assume you can't start these guys until you are level 8. But these guys again have sick class fantasy. I mean, didn't read the shaman or the I didn't read the shaman or the monks ones of the tooltips again, did I? So shamans use the power of the elements to enhance their weapon damage spells. Shamans summon totems in combat. My eyes are going funny there. Shamans summon totems in combat. It's small objectives to disable enemies or heal or cause damage to the enemies. So I just couldn't read them for some reason. I don't know if that was worded weirdly. I don't know. Monks are known for their skills in hand-to-hand fighting. Relying on their fists and feet as much as their weapons, monks can also specialise in calling upon the restorative powers of the mist to heal their allies. So there you go, there's the two guys for that. Like I said, you've got the melee tank and healer there, and you've got the ranged and the melee damage there and the healing. So I'll chuck back onto Demon Hunter. So Demon Hunter and Death Knight are both the same. They've both got tank and 2 melee DPS specs. Demon Hunters are a hero class, which means they start at a high level, which will now be level 8. Demon Hunters are dark outcasts that use forbidden demonic magic to hunt and kill their enemies. Now, what I want to explain about Demon Hunters is if you've got friends who play WoW, or you've read about WoW, they'll say, oh, play a Demon Hunter, they're so overpowered and they're so easy to learn and they're so dangerous, right? And they're really cool. Yes, that's fine, but like, also, I don't want you to fall into the trap of the fact that the people are going, they're really, really easy to really, and then they're going to change in Shadowlands and it's going to be a bit different to that. So I would say play what you want, don't play what's easy, but Demon Hunters are fairly easy to learn and they are very fun. It depends what you want to go for with class fantasy as well, I suppose. So, but they've got 2 melee DPS specs. I haven't really played a Demon Hunter, so I can't comment much on what the differences are between the two. But I know the tank spec is quite cool. You turn into this big demon beast and you just keep smashing through, which I suppose is a little bit like the bear form. You go into demon form and you take a load of damage. But from what I know is that they're quite mechanically, they're quite easy to learn and they're quite fun to play, and you get those double jumps and stuff. And it's not going to lie, but you look pretty badass, right? Death Knights, so I have actually played Death Knight, so I can actually comment on that. So you've got your 3 specs. One of the specs is very much like damage over time stuff. One of them is like pretty much like a remorseless winter damage dealing beast where you just walk around and obliterate everything. And then the tank spec, which is called Blood, basically is just you heal yourself constantly while attacking. So they're very, very hard to kill and it's not very easy for you to die, especially if you get skilled on a Blood Death Knight. You can do a lot. So Death Knights are also a hero class, which means they start at a high level, but like I said, it's going to be level 8 now, so it's not going to be that high, to be fair. Death Knights are a melee class with emphasis on causing disease and using dark magic. So basically they're a bit like a warrior, but instead of like smashy, they're like, I've got diseases and smashy. Death Knights are pretty cool. They don't have much in terms of movement and movement speed, but they do make up for that in the fact that they have this cool move called Death Grip, which is basically like Scorpion from Mortal Kombat, where they're like, get over here. So again, if you want some kind of class fantasy of that being this kind of undead risen zombie dude, outside of being undead, I mean, you could be an undead Death Knight. I mean, that's kind of like, you know, crazy fantasy, but yeah. So my suggestion is, like, you know, discuss with yourself, obviously, what you'd like to play. Would you like to play relic? Would you like to play tank, healer, or damage? Would you like to play, if you want to play damage, would you like to play range damage, or would you like to play melee damage? And then kind of go from the kind of fantasy from there. If you are thinking about getting into WoW and you're umming and ahhing still, and you kind of been convinced now to play all the classes, at least do the class trials. I know you can click down here and you will be able to do that in current retail. Click on the class trials and try them out, and then if you like the feel of one of them, take it all the way. And it doesn't matter at the moment because you level quite quickly. It doesn't matter if you try doing a few at the same time. You can always change your mind. It's never too late. And with Shadowlands looming around the corner within 2 months, you've got 2 months to decide what you'd like to main. So yeah, guys, thanks for listening. I will be making the keybinds and movement video next. So stay tuned, and as always, please, if you liked the video, please like, subscribe, turn on the notifications, and if you really want to come talk to me, head over to my Twitch stream. The link's down below, but it's Twitch at Danimal UK, and I'll see you there.